Pastor Kerry Willis here, District Servant, Philadelphia District Church of the Nazarene. Just wanted to share a little with you here today on Mother's Day Eve, Saturday before Sunday. This morning, the first text I received was from a Carolina friend of mine, Frank Waldrop. Frank attended the church I pastored for 24 years. He's from South Carolina originally. I'm from North Carolina. And we had a little tradition down in the Carolinas. I don't know how far it stretched, but it was at least across both Carolinas. On Mother's Day, we went out to the rose bushes in the front yard or someone else's front yard, and we would cut rosebuds. If your mother was still living, you wore a red rosebud to church on Mother's Day. I've been out in my front yard today and got me a little red rosebud. I put it in a little holy water bottle that someone gave me. It's got a little cross on it. But it reminds me that even though I can't be with my mother this Mother's Day, that I do celebrate her life. And I'm going to have this right here with me through Mother's Day. When I talk to my mom on the phone, I'll let her know that I cut that red rosebud in honor of her and to give thanks to the Lord for her in my life. If your mother had already passed away, then you had a white rosebud that you would wear. And we would come to church, and everyone in the congregation had either a red or a white rosebud pinned to their lapel or their blouse or their jacket, whatever they were wearing. And it really was a tender tradition. Also, I've been thinking about my mother. Her name is Melba. We call her Lady Melba. She has been such a prayer influence in my life and the life of my brothers. You may know that all three of us are pastors. We had a great dad as well. He's going on to be with the Lord. This Mother's Day, our mother will celebrate Mother's Day with just the presence of Jesus. With the COVID-19 going on, neither of us as sons will come home to Harker's Island, North Carolina. But she's not sad, because in the words of Dad, Jesus is not a disappointment. So I know His presence will make up for our absence. My mother gave me a handwritten parable about 25 years ago. She had found it, I think, in Streams in the Desert, Volume 2, I believe is where it's recorded. Mrs. Cowman's great devotional book. And she wrote it in her own handwriting. It meant so much to her as a mother, and gave a copy in an envelope to all three of her sons. My mom reminded me yesterday on the phone of that parable, and she said, "Kerry, I've been reading the parable of a mother this week, and the older I get, the more tender and the more real it becomes." And so I have a copy here of the parable of a mother. You can Google it and find it yourself. It's written by Temple Bailey. And I want to read it for you, and maybe just one verse of Scripture. I think it'll touch your heart. Here is the parable. A young mother set her foot on the path of life. "Is the way long?" she asked. And her guide said, "Yes, and the way is hard. And you will be old before you reach the end of it, but the end will be better than the beginning." But the young mother was happy, and she would not believe that anything could be better than these years. So she played with her children and gathered flowers for them along the way, and bathed with them in the streams, and the sun shone on them, and life was good. And the young mother cried, "Nothing will ever be lovelier than this." Then night came and storm, and the path was dark, and the children shook with fear and cold. And the mother drew them close and covered them with her mantle. And the children said, "Oh, mother, we are not afraid, for you are near, and no harm can come." And the mother said, "This is better than the brightest of days, for I have taught my children courage." And the morning came, and there was a hill ahead. And the children climbed and grew weary, and the mother was weary. But at all times she said to the children, "A little patience, and we are there." So the children climbed, and when they reached the top, they said, "We could not have done it without you, Mother." And the mother, when she lay down that night, looked up at the stars and said, "This is a better day than the last, for my children have learned fortitude in the face of difficulty." Yesterday I gave them courage. Today I have given them strength. And the next day came, strange clouds darkened the earth, clouds of war and hate and evil. And the children groped and stumbled, and the mother said, "Look up, lift your eyes to the light." And the children looked and saw above the clouds an everlasting glory, and it guided them beyond the darkness. And that night the mother said, "This is the best day of all, for I have shown my children God." And the days went on, and the months and the years, and the mother grew old, and she was small and bent. But her children were strong and tall, and walked with courage. And when the way was hard, they helped their mother. And when the way was rough, they lifted her, for she was as light as a feather. And at last they came to a hill, and beyond the hill they could see a shining road and a golden gate. The gate was flung wide, and the mother said, "I have reached the end of my journey. And now I know, yes, the end is better than the beginning. For my children can walk alone, and their children after them." And the children said, "You will always walk with us, Mother, even when you have gone through the gates." And they stood and watched her as she went on alone. And the gates closed after her, and they said, "We cannot see her, but she is with us. A mother like ours is more than a memory. She is truly, yes, a living presence." And I want to give you one verse from Proverbs 31:28. Her children arise and call her blessed. Happy Mother's Day. If you can't wear a red rosebud, wear a white one. And give thanks to God for your mother.